Hi everyone, Adrian from Living Holistic Health here. Today I'm going to talk to you about some research that's just come out of the University of San Francisco looking at the effect on eating a specific type of diet on reducing inflammation in the brain and the nervous system and the body beyond. Now we know that inflammation is part of the body's process it normally uses to heal itself, but sometimes inflammation can get out of hand and can cause many conditions when it continues on for a period of time. So we're talking, inflammatory conditions that are related to many things, such as, for our nervous system and our brain health, anxiety, depression, and autoimmune conditions such as multiple sclerosis. You've got Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease in there as well. Rheumatoid arthritis is another one that's driven by inflammation. So, being able to control inflammation is critical to managing many of these conditions, and it's done, hopefully via drugs in certain ways. But what this research is showing is there's a specific type of diet which has been shown to work at reducing inflammation in the body and in our brains and our nervous system, which has implications for helping with these sorts of conditions. So, in a nutshell, it's called a ketogenic style of diet. Now, you may have heard of the ketogenic diet before. The ketogenic diet, the basis of it is that it's basically a very low carbohydrate diet, adequate protein and high fat type of diet. Okay, and the person basically shifts from burning fuel for the body, which we normally burn sugar for fuel in the body. So that's like our normal energy burning cycle is glucose goes in the top. The cycle turns around like that and energy spits out the bottom. That's the way that our bodies normally produce energy. But what we do in a ketogenic style diet is we actually stop the glucose from entering that energy cycle, and the body then has to use fat instead for fuel. So the fat goes into the energy cycle and our energy spits out the bottom, instead of glucose and sugar going in the top and energy spitting out the bottom. So we become what's called fat adapted. That is, that our fat is the main source of energy for the body. That's the fat on our bodies and the fat that we actually eat through food. And when we change the body from a sugar burning type of energy cycle into a fat burning type of energy cycle, we move into a state of what is known as ketosis. So our body runs on this fuel, this chemical called ketones, which you can measure in the urine or the blood, just to make sure that we're in that ketosis state, and so therefore we can function on these ketones. Now the effect of that is that, as this research is showing here, and they've done it in some animal studies, but it's been quite well known. It was first used for epilepsy many years ago. The ketogenic style diet was used for epilepsy. It's now moved through into many different applications. We use it quite a bit for people who are also trying to lose weight. They'll go onto a ketogenic style diet, and that's very useful for those sorts of people. But this research is really exciting because it's showing, well, the researchers are actually finding out how this diet works and how it's actually affecting different proteins that are in the brain and reducing the inflammation in the brain, reducing the swelling and restoring the function of the brain. And that's really important, especially for these researchers when they're looking at people who have got brain-related injuries and increasing their recovery after injuries. So it's done, but as I say, the applications of this have just go far beyond looking at just brain-related inflammation for those those conditions that I've mentioned, but looking for other conditions associated with inflammation in our bodies generally. So, for example, inflammation is a process that can spur on something like arthritis, for example. So, arthritis, where you get achy joints and loss of function in the joints, etc. Arthritis is a condition that's spurred by inflammation. So if we're able to control the amount and reduce the amount of inflammation in the body through diet by working on this ketogenic style diet, therefore we're able to reduce inflammation, the drivers of those conditions like arthritis, for example, and get back a better functioning, restoration of function in our joints, for example. So that's the inflammation can work on other parts. Also, the mention here, especially that they're looking at things like, for example, if someone has atherosclerosis, so that's when the plaques are starting to build up inside the arteries, particularly around the heart. That's driven by inflammation in the body. So the researchers are very excited that if we can control that process, then we can actually stop that from happening through diet. We're using this ketogenic style diet and actually reverse some of the atherosclerosis, which obviously leads on to heart conditions like cardiovascular disease or stroke. So that's really exciting to be able to control that process through food and possibly reverse it as well. That's really exciting. But inflammation can, even go beyond just those joint things. You can look for things like, for example, even moving down the spectrum of diabetes. Diabetes is a condition that's spurred on by inflammation. So being able to control that with a specific type of diet is really, really exciting. So it appears that the research is backing up that this ketogenic diet, it has been used for many things, but now we're looking at how it can actually work on specific proteins to actually reduce inflammation, and it has a lot of applications. So if you're interested in how you can start by looking at introducing a ketogenic style diet, I recommend that you get some professional help around it. We certainly use it quite a bit for our patients because there are dangers associated with it. You don't want to move too far into the ketosis state, into what's called ketoacidosis. And we measure that when we use these things called keto sticks, which you can just get from the pharmacy. And if people are going too far up into it, you can just see there that there's a colour change here. And if people are moving up into this colour changes, they're just urine sticks. Moving up into the dark purple range, that's when they move into a state of what we call ketoacidosis, which can be, you see that up on the screen there, moving up this way. That can be a little bit dangerous to the body. The body starts to break down muscle and it becomes a bit acidic. So we don't want, when we coach our clients and we talk about the benefits and how to do it properly of the ketogenic diet, you need to make sure that it is very mild and you aren't going too fast. So you're controlling the amount of refined carbohydrates that you're eating, particularly initially early. If you want to do it for yourself, you can do that just to be removing all the starchy foods in particular, so your rices, your breads, your white potato, that sort of stuff. And then the way that you do it is you have good and adequate supply of protein, and you have a really, really good dose of fat. That's something that a lot of people don't think about as well. You need to be eating a very, very good amount of good healthy fats. So things like your plant-based, like your avocado, your olive oil, your nuts and seeds, lots of fish and seafood, for example. They've got good fats in them, so you need to be eating plenty of those, a good quantity with each main meal and for snacks in between, because that's going to help the body stop it from burning sugar and glucose and teach it that it's going to be using fat for fuel instead. So you need to be getting that right mix, and get some professional advice around that, because it's important that you get the ratios right so that you're in that healthy range of ketosis. And then once you're able to do that, then you're able to if you become fat adapted over a period of weeks, as the studies show, then you become much more easily adapted to that fat state, and it becomes much easier for you to process carbohydrates in general. So it's to get some advice around it, because you want to make sure you get the starting of it right, and you get set up properly. You get the right program. You know how to measure your ketones by using these keto sticks as well. That's very important, and get taught how to do that properly. Then once you're up and running, you can basically monitor it yourself, and you can get some of the benefits of reducing inflammation in the body, as has been shown by this research, which could be really, really helpful for you if you've got any of those conditions, as I mentioned, anything to do with anxiety, depression, or epilepsy, or any sort of brain conditions, neurological conditions in general. So as I said, your multiple sclerosis, your Parkinson's disease, all that sort of stuff, and then through to the other body systems to do with inflammation. So your cardiovascular stuff, your heart stuff, even asthma, all of these things are driven by inflammation. And as this research is showing, this diet is reducing the amount of inflammation in the body, which is a really cool way of doing it. So you don't necessarily have to go out and get all of these drugs or all of these other supplements and bits and pieces. If you can control the majority of inflammation in your body through the diet, then you get control back over your health, and you can reduce the impact of these diseases and these conditions on your body, and you can do what you need to do in your life and enjoy it a lot better. So I think that's a really cool thing, a really excellent way to improve your health through diet by following this style of diet, as this research is showing, and it has broad applications to enhance the quality of life for yourself and your friends and your family as well. So please share this information. If you'd like some more details, just give us a message. We're happy to point you in the right direction. Or alternatively, if you'd like to come and see us, of course, we can walk you through the basics of how to get this set up, and then you can manage it from there and hopefully reap the benefits of it. So there we go. How the ketogenic diet is showing to reduce inflammation and has these fantastic applications for all of these inflammatory conditions. I hope you find that very, very useful. And thanks very much for listening. Cheers.